Welcome to the Dynasty Evaluation Show, and today we got the OG, Theo Greminger, on here talking today about Ashton Jeanty. I mean, we got a lot to talk about, but this guy's 5'9", 215, Boise State running back, came out as a junior. We are ready to have a show. Buckle up. Theo, you come on here once in a while, but it's been a minute, man. What is going on?
Just the same as you, John, getting ready for this rookie class. It feels like we're talking rookies 24/7. I got the easy one, though. So you gave the other guys the hard one. I mean, I got the easy one. So talking Ashton Jeanty, yeah, I always love talking shop with you. We're friends at this point, and every time we get together on the mic, it's always a blast.
I got your personal phone number. It's like we're dating or something, man. It's nice. It's nice.
John's creeping in my text. I mean, you never know.
Creeping in your DMs, boy.
That's it. That's it.
So we talked about a lot of people already. We had a lot of wide receivers, tight ends, the running backs, the quarterbacks. We've got a lot of people under the belt, but there's every draft has that diamond that, there's not even a diamond in the rough, just that sparkling diamond that everybody wants. And this year's draft is Ashton Jeanty, because even in Superflex drafts, he's going one-on-one. Like, there's not even – I'm in Superflex drafts. I traded for one-on-one on purpose in some classes that don't have a good running back stable, because I know I'm going to have a great young football player in Ashton Jeanty. So what we're going to do now is we're going to talk about the good, the bad, and the fantasy draft capital, the NFL draft capital, teams he's going to go to. We're going to talk about all that kind of stuff today. So right from the get-go, I sent you a show sheet. So on the show sheet, I kind of asked, the first question was, what's the good about Ashton Jeanty? What is the good on paper, the film, the analytics, test scores, all that kind of stuff like that? I mean, you could talk for probably 4 straight days about Ashton Jeanty, all the good things he did, how many carries he had, blah, blah, blah. But I mean, lay it out there for all the people who don't know, because of the fact that me and you and a lot of guys, this is our busy season, man. This is like, I'm in C2C leagues. I'm in all this stuff. I love all this, like digging into the rookies. Most people who are in C2C leagues, they've known about Ashton Jeanty for a couple of years, but some people like, who's this Ashton Jeanty guy? Lay it out for all the newbies. Who is Ashton Jeanty? All the good about Ashton Jeanty.
Yeah, I mean, Ashton Jeanty, so if it was like baseball, this would be like sort of a 5-tool prospect, where when we get to Ashton Jeanty, it's very hard to poke holes in his game. And I think people who are trying to poke holes in Jeanty's game at this point, they're just trying to kind of be clickbaity. It's a great running back class, but it's a great running back class. One of the main reasons it's a great running back class, it's not the depth. It's not all the guys that are going to get drafted. It's that you have, like you said, the crown jewel at the top, where Ashton Jeanty is a Saquon Barkley level prospect. And we saw it 2 seasons ago with Bijan Robinson, Jahmyr Gibbs. And I would say that when we're looking at the enthusiasm for Jeanty in fantasy football, I'd say he's right there with Bijan, probably ahead of where Gibbs was at this point in the process. Gibbs ends up going 12 overall, and of course has been a remarkably good fantasy asset. But when it comes to Jeanty, there's so much to like. He's incredibly strong physically. The guy's like 217 pounds. He's 5'9". He made Bruce Feldman's freaks list, so that's always on the Athletic. Bruce Feldman will list these guys with these incredible athletic traits, and Jeanty was like an easy 600-pound squatter. And the only reason that he didn't squat more is the Boise State strength and conditioning coaches wouldn't let him put more weight on the bar, because why? He's already doing 600 pounds. So it's like incredibly good frame, incredibly good strength. The production is silly. The most production we've seen at the running back spot as a college football player, besides Barry Sanders. And it was, when it comes to Jeanty, it's, for me, I think that the thing that gets us most excited for fantasy is there's a number of backs in this draft class where we can say, if this guy gets the volume, this guy's going to produce for us. I mean, certainly like the Kaleb Johnsons, the Omarion Hamptons, there's a lot of backs like that in this class. But when it comes to Jeanty, it's how explosive he is. The yards after contact, the breakaway runs. I mean, the like when you talk about like all the runs he had, the guy had The guy had 63 runs over that went for 10 yards or more. And I think when it comes to 15-yard runs, I got to pull up the exact stat, but it's 36 runs of over 15 yards. It was like over 1,300 yards came on explosive breakaway runs. So when you think about like the highlights you see on like X, it's Jeanty running away from a defense. So for me, it's like in today's NFL, we love these backs that can produce big explosive plays. Saquon Barkley last year was a guy breaking off big explosive runs. Certainly Jahmyr Gibbs, big explosive runs and catches. Devon Achane, we think of his rookie season, big explosive runs and catches. The big playability with the ability to absorb volume, the well-rounded nature of his game, the ability to break through contact, and how elusive he is in avoiding tackles, breaking tackles. Like there's so much to like there. And then the other sort of the knock on him would be the lack of pass catching. But at the end of the day, we saw it in 2023. The guy had 39 receptions in 2023. And he ended up having, I believe it was 6 games with 4 receptions, 7 games with at least 4 catches. So we've seen it where that sort of, when you hit that sort of a level as a receiver, as a collegiate, it usually translates well to sort of like this thing of ours, fantasy football. I don't have any question marks about Jeanty as a receiver. I think like he has potential to be a 70 reception guy at some point in his career. And even if he doesn't, he's going to be a 55 plus reception a year guy with the rushing added into it. You're talking about incredible numbers. And if you find the right landing spot with the right offensive coordinator, this is a guy where at some point in his career could give us a 25 point per game season and be the 101 in multiple years in redraft. So nothing really to poke holes in with Jeanty for me. It's really mostly upside and enthusiasm. And then the only other knock, John, that you hear people saying is he absorbed this huge amount of volume in college. But we've seen a lot of guys who have come to the next level after having a huge collegiate rushing share, a huge collegiate touch numbers, and thriving as pros. We saw Jonathan Taylor had every touch you imaginable at Wisconsin, gave us an RB1 overall season in year 2, and gave us like top 5 running back numbers the entire second half of the season as a rookie in year 1. So I don't really have a whole lot of holes to poke on Jeanty. For me, it's a lot of enthusiasm.
I mean, I guess some people worry about like the biggest concern for a lot of the players coming to the NFL right now for fantasy players is like, oh man, it's a combine back. You have a power back and then you have a receiving back, and it's going to be this co-backfield, and he's not going to get the touches, and he can't handle the load. And you look at, as a freshman, he had 156 carries. As a sophomore, he had 220 carries, which is pretty much, that's the norm for like an NFL season. 374 carries last year for 2,601 yards and 29 touchdowns. I mean, and he's got a total of 80 receptions in his college career, which is pretty good. 43 in his sophomore year, only 23 this year. But I mean, he's averaging 7. He averaged 7 yards a rush on 374 carries. I mean, if you don't do the numbers and you're not like kind of a like I guess analytics kind of guy, 7 yards a carry. That means you're getting a first. Every 2 carries, you're getting a first down for your team. They could have just gave him the ball, and they would never have a third down if they gave him the ball every 2 carries. 7 yards a carry. And the thing was, the offense, everybody that played Boise State knew that he was getting the ball. Like they focused in on somebody. You saw during the Super Bowl where the Chiefs pretty much, they lost the game almost on purpose because their job was to shut down Saquon Barkley. They focused on that, and it blew up in their face because Jalen Hurts killed them in the passing game. Every time Boise State showed up somewhere to every stadium, everybody on defense had, back in the day, they had his number written down somewhere. We're stopping Ashton Jeanty today. We're stopping Ashton Jeanty today. And they couldn't do it. They absolutely couldn't do it. He got pulled at like halftime and in the middle of the third quarter in half the games he played in. And he still almost broke the rushing record. He was only a handful of yards short. This guy is absolutely phenomenal. There's not one concern in the world about having Ashton Jeanty on his team. He's landing spot proof. He's offensive line proof. He's everything proof. There's not too many guys who are proof on every level, but he is proof. Whatever proof, put a word in front of that proof. He's proof of everything. He's He's offensive line proof. He's receiving proof. He's bad passing game proof. He's everything proof. He's going to show up somewhere and make you – he's going to be the RB1. He's worth trading for the 101 in this year's draft. There's some guys who are questionable. Sometimes receivers don't work out. Sometimes quarterbacks don't work out. Sometimes tight ends take a couple years to develop. Ashton Jeanty is going to show up day one and get, like you said, get you 25 fantasy points probably every game his rookie season, and so on and so forth. And it's going to continue to do that. He is like the staple of your dynasty fantasy or your fantasy football roster. He will be for a long time too. So he's worth trading up for. And on top of that, I mean, he's still young too. So I really don't understand like why you wouldn't. Is there any negatives about Ashton Jeanty? I mean, I don't want to nitpick here and just kind of say like, oh, he does this. When I watch every all 22 film of Ashton Jeanty, it's really you have to go with a fine tooth comb and then go after that with a razor to try to like find the bad things in Ashton Jeanty's game. What did you find anything that's bad about Ashton Jeanty?
No, I really didn't. And I think that a lot of people who are film people are not finding it either. And what's interesting, John, is there's been years where we've gotten very excited about the RB1 in a class. Like, I was excited about Breece Hall. I was excited about Kenneth Walker, certainly not to this level, but those guys were not considered to be the top offensive player in their class. And yeah, that can be an indictment a little bit on the overall quality of the quarterback class, the overall quality of the wide receiver class, but it's the truly rare players get ranked by these film guys, the Dane Bruglers, the Lance Zierleins. These guys are putting Jeanty at the very top of the offensive players in this entire draft class. So for me, Jeanty's grading out higher than any offensive lineman, than any wide receiver, than any tight end, than any quarterback. That's very, very telling. It kind of for a running back to separate himself, because like we said, this is a deep and quality running back class. And even if you took Jeanty out of this running back class would still be head and shoulders above what we saw last year. Certainly probably in terms of depth would be not at the top, obviously, the Bijan Gibbs, Devon Achane at the top. That was a very, very talented top of the 2023 class. But there was a fall off after we get a little bit deeper in that class. So I would say even if you took Jeanty out, the overall depth would be considerably higher than the previous 2 years. Jeanty is still like head and shoulders above these guys. I love the stat with the forced missed tackles, where Jeanty had 151 missed tackles forced this past year, which was like 50 more than any other player in the class.
Right.
So against collegiate competition, he completely shredded them. And you'll have people sort of pointing at the Mountain West. But when we saw Jeanty against Oregon, that was the game where, like, I know Billy Muzio, who you know as well, player profiler. Billy lives in Oregon, and he was going to the game, and I'm like, got to watch my guy Jeanty. Jeanty is the absolute truth. He's a first-round pick in redraft in 2025, and Billy's always a little apprehensive about the college guys, but like he texted me after like a quarter and was like losing his mind over this kid. Against Oregon, he had 3 rushing touchdowns. Boise State loses 37-34, and that was an Oregon team that beat Ohio State this year that was like really, really top-notch, won the Big Ten, beat Penn State. So like we saw that in that big game. For me, it's like when we start talking Jeanty, I think you brought up how a lot of running backs, we talk about landing spots. We talk about potential to be in committee backfields. Jeanty is a program changer where he ends up on a team. Offensive coordinators are going to build the offense around Jeanty. And when we go down the list of potential landing spots, they're largely positive. I think when you go down, it starts out where could we see New England do a shock pick at 4 for Jeanty? Probably not. But that landing spot, you'd have Jeanty as the focal point of an offense with a mobile quarterback in Drake May. We'd start getting excited about that. When you go down to like Jacksonville and Vegas, we are ecstatic if he goes 5 or 6. The Liam Cohen offense would be fantastic for him. Las Vegas, the guy could challenge for the lead in touches at the running back position this year and get a considerably high target share out of that backfield. Go down the list to your Chicago Bears at 10 would be a fantastic landing spot. Dallas at 12 would be a fantastic landing spot. Really the only landing spot, which I actually think is a viable landing spot where we would have a little bit of buzzkill on draft day, would be New Orleans at 9. because I think New Orleans, he'll be in the wheelhouse because, like we said, they hire an offensive-minded head coach in Kellen Moore. They pick 9 overall, which is certainly not a reach for Jeanty by any means. And he's going to grade out as most teams' best offensive player on their board. Could New Orleans take Jeanty and use a dual-headed backfield, sort of like what we saw out of multiple offenses like Detroit? And Kellen Moore is just like, you know what? We don't have a great quarterback situation, but I'm going to feature touches for my backs. That would be a little bit disappointing, but pretty much every other landing spot, I think Jeanty's early ADP in redraft is going to continue to rise. His early best ball ADP will continue to rise. And it comes to an interesting discussion in Dynasty because, like right now, without knowing a landing spot, Bijan Robinson, Jahmyr Gibbs are certainly going to be ahead of Jeanty for most. Once you get to running back 3, he's in the conversation. And I'm like the biggest Devon Achane guy around, but it's Jeanty. And at the end of the day, could Jeanty land on a team like Dallas at 12? And then we're having some conversations about where to rank him in Dynasty. He's still got to be behind those big 2 because they've earned it with the on-field production. But in terms of projecting where a guy's going to be in 3 years, Jeanty is going to be an absolute killer. So, yeah, I mean, he's terrific. And he's going to be a foundational piece to a Dynasty roster. And he's a guy where we're projecting him to be a big-time producer for multiple seasons. Again, it's not like a back like a Derrick Henry in a sense where we love the profile, but we're always constantly a little bit worried about the absorbing all this volume. With Jeanty, he has the explosive runs, the ability to thrive in like a screen game, in a short passing situation, the ability to force missed tackles. We love it. And you start looking back on names like LaDainian Tomlinson, which I know Thor Nystrom comped him to Tomlinson.
Yeah.
That gets you extremely excited. You start having to go back historically just because backs don't usually grade out this high. So we talked about Saquon back. We're talking about a 29, soon to be 28, 29-year-old at this point that we're starting to comp him to as a prospect level. And then, of course, Bijan. Bijan was like, the enthusiasm for Bijan, I think, was comparable to what we're seeing right now with Jeanty.
Yeah, the thing is, I think Jerry Jones is already like stitching the jersey of Ashton Jeanty in a Dallas Cowboy uniform. Like he can't wait for Jeanty to show up on draft day at number 12 and just hit that easy button, bam. Jeanty,
that's the legacy pick. I've used this kind of term in a couple articles and on some podcasts. Jerry Jones is getting to be much older. He's been doing this for a long, long time. But if you think about the Dallas Cowboys, they've been synonymous with a bell cow running back, whether it's Tony Dorsett, whether it's DeMarco Murray, whether it's Emmitt Smith, whether it's Zeke Elliott, and multiple times throughout Jerry Jones's career, he's drafted a running back early. He did it with Emmitt Smith in the first round. He did it with Zeke Elliott, of course, very, very high, top 5 pick when he was selected. And then they went full circle last year, John, where last year, Dallas, the season was a big disappointment. Tony Pollard left, and Dallas basically seemed to go all pure analytics model, where it was like a running backs don't matter situation where they went with Rico Dowdle and they brought back old man Zeke Elliott. The season went south. You have to think that even though you can't necessarily blame the running back situation for that, part of Jerry Jones in the back of his mind is like, you know what? We messed up. We should have brought in a better running back. They had an opportunity to go get a Derrick Henry type. They didn't do it. And now it's staring at them. So they're sitting at 12. Could they move up? You say the jersey sales. Like, if Ashton Jeanty's a Dallas Cowboy, that's the number 1 jersey in the entire NFL. You're going to see Ashton Jeanty Dallas Cowboys jerseys in every city in the United States. Little kids are going to want that jersey. So at the end of the day, I think that matters more than we think when it comes to this level of a star, big name player, sort of a household name before the draft type player.
Yeah. And, the thing is, like, teams have an identity. Like you said, like the Raiders like fast receivers, the Patriots like tight ends, and the Cowboys love running backs. It's almost like you can, what type of ice cream your wife likes. You know where to go, and you go to Starbucks. You know what she wants all the time. You know what your kids like at McDonald's. we know what the NFL teams like. They have their thing, they have their ways, and the thing of, I watch a lot of college football. I wish JT was here today. He's not feeling very well because he watches a ton of college football. But I watch all 22 on almost all these players. I'm pretty far down the rabbit hole with a lot of these guys. And if you watch like players like Kaleb Johnson, like he had a great offensive line and he's got great vision. He gets as soon as the ball is hiked, Kaleb Johnson hits the hole, bam, and he finds these long runs all the time because he hits the hole with not putting his head down like Walter Payton. There's holes for him and he takes advantage of it. Then you get to Marion Hampton, and that guy is just like, it's almost like if there's a running back, if there's no hole, he's putting his head up somebody's butt and making a hole. He puts his head down. He's never going to not get the extra 2 or 3 yards. He's, I don't like that he pops up every play and then, has to kind of decide where he's going. And then he gets at it. But it's Ashton Jeanty just kind of he's everything. He knows how to time plays. He knows where to be, he knows when to stutter, when to go, it's almost like he can see the play before the play even happens. And that's a special gift to be able to have that kind of, because there's vision, when the play develops and you're watching it unfold and you make your decisions. It's another thing, know what's going to happen when the plays, even though you know the play and say it's a 22 dive or a 22 blast or, whatever the play may be, a 38 sweep, whatever kind of thing. It's like he's already done the play on film. And even though it's never happened before, it's like he's already seen the play on film. And he knows where to go when to be there. You don't get 7 yards of carry by not having elite vision, that kind of stuff. He's absolutely amazing to watch on film. Just the team he's around wasn't great, but he made the team great. It's super. I love watching film, but watching him is wow. There's not too many wow running backs that there are, and he's a wow running back. It's I can't wait to watch him in the NFL for a long time because of all the special talents he has.
Yeah, I mean, I think you really summed it up. When it comes to Jeanty, it's sort of you brought up how you've been positioning yourself to get to that 101. This is a year where I think it's worth doing that because we have a lot of question marks about the 102 right now. I mean, I really like Ted McMillan. I think by draft day, there's going to be at least one of these quarterbacks that we're excited about. And there's potential that you have a RB2 in this class that lands well, maybe even in the first round, where you're that guy's worth a top 3 pick in our dynasty leagues. But this is a year where there is a tier at the very top, and it's not a 2-person tier. Even last year with the Marvin Harrison Jr., by the time we drafted, you had not only Harrison Jr., but you had Malik Neighbors with his absurd talent and his draft capital, and he had moved into the conversation with Harrison Jr., at least with some analysts. And you had Caleb Williams and Jaden Daniels, both in situations where their profiles and their draft capital warranted selecting them even ahead of a Marvin Harrison Jr., Malik Neighbors. So last year was stronger at the top when we talk about Superflex Dynasty rookie values. This year, I really like this rookie class more so than some. I'm still very enthusiastic about getting rookie picks, and I'm embracing the unknown. And I'll stay bullish on this class ahead of some. But when it comes down to it, it's a year where there's the 101 and it's a tier break down to the 102. So doing what you can to not completely sacrifice the future. But if you get an opportunity to make that move up from the 103 or even the 102 to the 101, it's going to be worth it for you because you're getting a premium Teflon asset for you in Dynasty. And much like Bijan Robinson, Jeanty has so much steam and momentum before we even have our Dynasty rookie drafts and before we even have the majority of startups and really before the NFL draft itself, that if, God forbid, Jeanty went down to an injury and missed his first season, he still has enough trade equity that you're going to be able to re-roll him for your quarterback needs in Superflex next year. He's a Teflon asset. That matters a lot when we're trying to make future deals. Even if he's slow out the gate, Jeanty's going to maintain trade equity. And again, most people are going to have him as a top 3. The worst you'll see him is about RB5 in Dynasty, probably closer to RB3 for most at this point. So, not a whole lot to poke holes on this one, John.
I'd like to thank Nick Scripp at P2W Fantasy for giving me he had an orphan in one of his leagues, and it was the best fantasy football team I've ever seen in my life. The wide receiver class was just everything about the class. Even the bench was like better than like most of my other fantasy football teams, like actual teams. It's a dynasty league. I get to keep all these guys. I have my running backs are Saquon Barkley and you know, I mean, it's Bijan and Saquon are my two running backs. My third running back is Derrick Henry. It's absolutely one, and I got the 101 pick this year. And it's like I'm going to walk into this. I don't need any receivers. I don't need anything on this whole team. It's just to be able in that situation where I didn't even need to trade up. I just got handed this orphan over, and I got to take over and be able to get Ashton Jeanty. It's probably the only league I'm ever be able to get him in. But to put him, I don't know. Like I'm not even sure Ashton Jeanty will start at like a flex spot in this league. That's how good this team is. But at the same time, man, I'm going to trade away everything for future round picks, anything that's not like startable, because I know that Ashton Jeanty is going to be in a future, like a centerpiece of my team going forward, because Saquon's already 28 years old or 27 years old. So I know he's not going to be there forever, but Jeanty's going to be on this team for probably 5-6 years without. Why would I trade a guy away like that who I know can handle the load and catch the ball in the backfield? Do it. Like people are like, you got to trade down and get 3 or 4 more picks and try to re-roll. This is not a draft class where you re-roll. Like, this is not a draft class to re-roll. And let's just say in your fantasy football drafts, if you don't get Ashton Jeanty at 101, you know, that kind of deal, that's okay, because what happened to Mario Hampton? Like, I want Mario Hampton to go to the Raiders. I think that would be that's the Josh Jacobs in a black and silver uniform, just a re-roll. That's what I see in my head. The perfect spot for Mario Hampton is the Raiders. If you miss out on that, you got Kaleb Johnson. You can go in the middle, like the early second round of your fantasy football drafts, and still get Travion Henderson and still get Quinshon Judkins. And if you don't have any early picks, you look at it later, you still got guys in this draft like people like RJ Harvey and like Ollie Gordon in like round 4. Like this is the best year in the world not to have a team that you punted on and you tried to re-roll with wide receivers and tight ends and quarterbacks and need running backs. You can literally have one pick at each one of these rounds and pick up running back every pick and replenish your entire team. This is such a good draft class.
Yeah, and it's funny because it's much better than last year and it's much better than next year. So like it's almost like this running back class is like 2 classes plus when you look at the overall depth and all that. I think that Hampton's a great name. I actually think Henderson, by the time we draft in our rookie drafts post NFL draft, is going to steam way up in Superflex leagues, because I think the draft capital he gets is going to be outstanding. Certainly Quinshon Judkins, Kaleb Johnson. And then there's that next group of running backs where there's a lot of quality. And if the landing spots match the quality, we're going to be head over heels of them because we already like the profiles. I saw this question in the chat, John. This was a good one.
I have the 101, and I'm obviously taking Ashton. What is the minimum I should be asking for that pick? Is Chase too much from Will Power on YouTube? So, Will, man, I'm going to say if you're asking for Chase and somebody gives them to you, then I'd take it for sure. Running backs are running backs are replaceable a lot more than wide receivers in my mind anyway. I would, if somebody was to say, yes, I'll give you Jamar Chase for Ashton Jeanty, I'm making that happen. You know, I don't care what my running back room looks like. If I don't have any running backs whatsoever, you could trade for other running backs. And like I said before, you can get really good running backs in this year's class in round 3, 4, 5. So if you have a chance to get Jamar Chase, I think you have to make that happen. But am I on your train of thought? What are you thinking here?
Yeah, no, I think that when it comes down to it, Jeanty's a premium asset. If we're looking at running backs or wide receivers, I think Bijan and Gibbs, just because of the nature of the beast, we know what we're getting with them. Those 2 guys, I think I would take ahead of Jeanty. Wide receiver wise, I'm still going to take that Jamar Chase side. I think Chase is absolutely premium. Justin Jefferson in the same way. Yeah. Malik Neighbors in the same way. When it comes down to it, there's some interesting ones head to head. Do you consider a CeeDee Lamb, Ashton Jeanty, where CeeDee Lamb, we have sort of the unknown variables in Dallas, new head coach, Dak getting a little bit older. Like that's a sort of move where if you want a wide receiver, I think you're looking at more of the CeeDee Lamb, Puka Nacua, Brian Thomas range. And then running back wise, I don't think there's another running back that head-to-head you're talking about with Jeanty right now. I think Devon Achane, exceptional talent, young enough, and had the most receptions at the running back position last year. He would sort of be it. Saquon, as fantastic as he is getting older. How many more years of elite production? Not everybody's Derrick Henry. And once these guys fall off, they fall off. So for me, it's a very small amount of players that you could get you off of the 101 in, let's say, in single QB leagues. Talk about Brock Bowers. If you're in tight end premium, he'd obviously be in that mix as well. And then even when you get to Superflex, though, John, Jeanty is such a surefire, big-time player and so far ahead that there's only about 8 quarterbacks that you would consider for that 101 pick,
Right.
maybe fewer. So he's a Teflon asset, about as Teflon as it gets.
So my biggest thing, like I'm going to leave this question up here. There's another question from Will also, but I'm going to leave this up here and say, I'm going to give you a couple questions, like kind of just off the cuff right now. So let's just say it's half point PPR, okay? And you get a full point per first down and a half point per carry league, okay? How much does that change the dynamics of this trade for Ashton Jeanty when you're talking about a half point PPR and a full point for first down, full half point per carry on a guy that's going to get a full workload? At what point in time do the guys like Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson come into conversation in this trade?
Half point's a little bit different, and most of my leagues are full point PPR. Chase and Jefferson are just such high level, like God tier wide receivers that I'm still probably going to lean into those two guys. But I do think that when you're getting points for first down, that factors into it because Jeanty's going to be a first down machine, and the points and the ability to handle volume where you're getting rewarded for carries. I think that would sort of change things a little bit. But at the end of the day, John, those two guys, Chase and Jefferson, there's so much we know about their situations. We know about the coaching staffs that are coaching them. We know about the quarterbacks that are quarterbacking them, assuming it's J.J. McCarthy taking over. We know about their skill position talent around them. At the end of the day, those two wide receivers are just so good that it would be hard for me to move one even to get a Jeanty. But I do think that Will's mind is sort of in the right spot because the scarcity of the very, very, very high scoring younger running back could sway some people off some elite wide receiver talent. It all depends on the manager, all depends on the league, and certainly all depends on roster context. But yeah, and then I see this other one. He's got this team. He's already got Justin Jefferson, CeeDee Lamb, Malik Neighbors, A.J. Brown, Drake London, and Amon-Ra St. Brown. So you've already got sort of the nuts team here, Will.
Yeah, and he's got okay. So my thing is, what happens if Ashton Jeanty lands A in Dallas, B in Denver, C in there's a handful of teams that you could in Minnesota and things like that where he's going to be he's not going to be a committee back. He's the face of the franchise kind of thing like that. Okay, so he's getting all the picks. So you have Bucky and JT. I would instantaneously be trading Bucky if I was able to get 101. Bucky's gone.
It's Bucky. Bucky was a fantastic return on your investment. Yeah. Bucky's going to be he's a really good player. I'm not just looking to unload Bucky because he was a 4th round pick. I think that's a poor process. The guy showed he's very, very, very good at fantasy football, and he's going to be a big-time asset for people next year. But you talk about the longevity of the player, you talk about the profile. It's apples and oranges. And when we consider that Bucky Irving was a 4th round draft pick versus Ashton Jeanty, who's going to be arguably the best running back prospect over the last 10 years, it's a no-brainer. I would consider trading Bucky and Jonathan Taylor if I could get Ashton Jeanty tomorrow, especially in a 20-man roster league where the running back 2 becomes a little bit less important for me, assuming the amount of starters and with the quality you have at the wide receiver spot. I would rather have Ashton Jeanty than Bucky and Jonathan Taylor.
20-man rosters is kind of shallow, man. I'm hoping this is a 14-team league with 20-man rosters. That's to me, I start getting I'm almost getting claustrophobic.
I play a lot of FFPC, and FFPC were 20-man. So at the end of the day, it's like the incredible asset, and at the end of the day, it's when we start looking at the ability to finish as the RB1 overall, Jeanty has that in the wheelhouse. I don't think that's ever going to be Bucky Irving.
No, and like I said before, we were talking about other running backs. If you can get 2 seconds for Bucky and also import, let's just say you're getting Ashton Jeanty, and you can import Travion Henderson and Quinshon Judkins and early second-round picks on top of that. I mean, you never have a problem with your running back room for the next 3 or 4 years with the depth you'd have in there. But 20-man rosters, I hear you guys talk about FFPC all the time. I so want to join an FFPC league, but it's just too tightening for me. 20-man rosters, that's a redraft, like kind of like I haven't played a redraft league besides a fishbowl in a long time, but it would hurt my feelings to watch the waiver wire and see all the talent that's on there with 20-man rosters. It kind of scares me a little bit, but so real quick, the last questions. Let's just what is the draft NFL draft projected range? If he gets drafted in the NFL draft, like we're expecting, like the top 7 to 20, 18ish kind of, where would that put him in fantasy football league, and what team do you want him to go to?
It's a great question. I think that when it comes to the team I'd want him to go to, I still think it's Dallas. Dallas has the foundation there. They have a better than middle of the pack quarterback in Dak Prescott. They have an alpha wide receiver in CeeDee Lamb that puts pressures on defenses. They're a team that can move the ball effectively. And if you put Ashton Jeanty in that role, I think that would be a fantastic spot for him. And I know Zach Martin is retiring, but I think the offensive line would be good enough where it's not going to be a bad offensive line he'd play behind. I think Dallas is really a great spot for him, but I don't discount Jacksonville. I think Jacksonville with Liam Cohen there.
Wow.
You brought up Bucky Irving. You brought up sort of how the Liam Cohen offense averaged 29 points per game last year in Tampa Bay. You have Trevor Lawrence coming back from injury. You have an alpha on the outside in Brian Thomas Jr. I think if we saw Ashton Jeanty be drafted by Jacksonville that early in the draft at 5th overall, then you're talking about a situation where it's like a Barkley, like a Zeke Elliott, where you're getting that exceptional draft capital ahead of where Bijan went at 8 overall. And if Jacksonville drafts Jeanty there, I would love that sort of fit, but with both the draft capital and with the fit with the OC with Liam Cohen. I think that would be fantastic.
I love hearing these like scenarios that I've never heard before, like the Jacksonville Jaguars. To me, Jacksonville's taking some type of interior lineman or defensive back.
Yeah. I mean, listen, if you're running Jacksonville and you're being a very like smart, rational person, you're just going to take a guy like Mason Graham and set it and forget it and be practical. But if you're looking to do something bold and looking to inject talent on your roster, then Ashton Jeanty, he's right there for you at 5. You don't have to make a move. You draft him. It speeds up the Liam Cohen experiment pretty quickly, I think. You have multiple weapons that would kind of fit around him. I think you could move on from ETN, and Tank Bigsby is actually a nice complementary back to Jeanty. And I think Bigsby could like absorb some hits, and also gives you some explosive ability himself. That would be a really nice dual-headed backfield, plus the ability for Jeanty to be a player that can really help Trevor Lawrence get back to where we saw him 2 seasons ago, where you have Brian Thomas on the outside. You've added one of the best young receivers in the NFL and a chance to add Ashton Jeanty at the running back spot. Lawrence, Thomas, and Jeanty, that's a foundational skill position set of players. I could see that, John.
My selfishness of a Trevor Lawrence homer wants Luther Burden or Emeka Egbuka to go to Jacksonville so he has a deep threat stud on the outside and in the middle of the field, like just awesome, the stud, that kind of, like a slot receiver to the T, like a Chris Godwin, DJ Moore type kind of player. I really want that, but man, that's I love every time I'm on a show and somebody says something different. It's like, wow, that just blew my mind, Jacksonville. I really appreciate you kind of like throwing that in my spectrum of that. So I love it. Will just one more question real fast. 33 total rosters, including IDP. You're choking me out. Like 33 with IDP. I have 35-man rosters in just offense. I would need to have like a like a 60-man roster to play IDP for that guy. I don't know how you guys do the FFPC. I want to get those tournaments so bad, but it scares me, like I said. So, Will, thanks a lot. But what team? What is the dream team that you want to see Ashton Jeanty go with? And I mean, you could say Dallas if you want to, but what is the dream team you want to see Ashton Jeanty go? Best offensive line, best defense, best situation. We can run the clock, run the ball. That the defense play like kind of like a Saquon to Philadelphia situation. What is the situation you want to see Ashton Jeanty go to?
Well, I think a dream situation. I think Jacksonville and Dallas are both up there for me. Dallas is probably the dream because it's when we start talking about the NFL being a flat circle historically, with the amount of high end running backs coming through that room, just sort of Dallas is due for another bell cow running back. For me, it's Dallas. I do think that seeing Ashton Jeanty end up in a Ben Johnson offense in Chicago would be awesome as well. I like the idea of him going to an offensive coordinator that knows what he's doing, that'll use him in some creative ways and maximize his potential for us in fantasy. And I certainly think Ben Johnson checks off those boxes. And you think about what Chicago has with a young quarterback, 2 good wide receivers, an offensive line that I think that they're going to invest in again this draft and this offseason. I think that would be a nice spot as well. So multiple spots for me. I really think for me it doesn't matter so much though, John. I think he's going to get that draft capital that's exciting, and he's going to be a focal point of wherever he goes.
The Roschon Johnson and the David Montgomery role, it has me perked right now, man. That would be awesome.
There you go.
Well, Theo, there's 100 million places people could find you at. Every time I turn on Twitter, every time I turn on YouTube, your face is on my screen. I love it. I love your beautiful face with that high and tight with a horseshoe on top haircut. Absolutely awesome.
For you, John. Just for you, bud. Just for you, bud.
Where can everybody find you at, man?
So, Player Profiler, Fantasy Points. I write a regular season article inside of The Athletic. I'm all over the place this time of year. But yeah, you can find my written work, my podcasts, Player Profiler YouTube, Fantasy Points YouTube, both sites for my articles, and then Athletic in season, and probably helping out with their draft guide this summer.
You can only find me on Twitter because I'm too lazy to do all the stuff Theo does. I like to do podcasts. This is what I don't like to write. I don't like to do all that stuff. I like to watch film. I like to talk about what I saw on film with awesome people like Theo and everybody else that's doing my rookie profiles with me on Fantasy and Frames. Absolutely. This is my fishing, my hunting, my painting, my whatever else anybody else has a hobby. This is my hobby. This is my dream. My kids are older now. I finally get to start doing it now. I started this channel about a year ago. This is so I always wanted to do, and now I'm living my dream here. So Theo, thanks for helping me out living my dream on this fantasy dynasty evaluation show, and thanks for being an awesome guest today.
You're the man, John.
All right, have a good one, everybody. I'll talk to you later. We have more profiles coming. I think we have 7 more shows coming next week, and all these rookies just pouring in. So thanks for joining the Dynasty Evaluation Show.